Audio check, audio check. Audio check, audio check. Hey folks, thanks for tuning in. I need just a minute or two to go ahead and get ready, and then we'll take a look at the deck list that I'm going to be playing tonight. I've posted around to a couple of the various forums and such that tend to have the D&T people. It'll take me just a minute to finish getting the stream set up and getting my spreadsheets and everything pulled up, and then we'll talk about the deck list. In case you weren't here yesterday to catch the stream, let me show you what we're going to be working with. You'll be working with a nice red, white, death, and taxes list. Hello again, you two. Thanks for stopping by. I'm just getting ready to get started here. I need another minute or two to finish pulling up my data and finishing up the numbers from last night. And then I'm going to get started with a league. Oh yeah, if you would post to the Discord, that's great. I forgot to post to the Discord. Let me post the source real quick. I'll probably still the last post there. Okay, I think that's everything I need to do here after I answer this message. Okay, so thanks for joining in. I am about to play some Red, White, Death, and Taxes. Again, the red here is splashing for Magus of the Moon and Pia and Kieran Nalar, as well as a Cunning Spark Mage in the sideboard. Most of the rest of this is very, very stock, other than the Rest in Peace that I have in the sideboard here. Since I've already talked about the deck list quite a bit, I'm going to go ahead and just jump into a league and start playing. So yesterday we ended up with a 2-3 finish in my first league. We had some very, very bad pairings, and the second league was a nice 5-0 finish. So our opponent is very, very likely on Miracles here. And this hand is pretty solid against Miracles. We have a turn 2 Thalia followed by a turn 3 Wingmare. And this turn 1 Aether Vial as well. We could get greedy and go for the waste here and just sort of set my opponent back since they've already mulliganed. But if they've already mulliganed and they have to deal with this Aether Vial, I already like my position quite a bit. I also just want to deploy my spells on turn 2 and 3, and I don't have a 4th land to guarantee that, so I'm going to go ahead and just get them. Search for Azcanta is a great card if you haven't been on the wrong side of this before. It is rough. So, the search for Azcanta is going to mean that they're going to get a scry every turn until this thing eventually flips into a land. So I don't actually want to wasteland either of those right now. I would rather wasteland the search for Azcanta eventually when it flips. Thalia into Wingmare is indeed rude, and we are going to go ahead and just deploy. Our opponent has F6'd, so we are in the clear. They don't have a counterspell as of right now. Huh. Does that change things? Hey, good evening. Nice to see you again, Archmage. Now that I only have one creature, I kind of want to just stick this sword before I'm unable to cast it. It takes a turn of pressure off, but unless my opponent's remaining cards are like land Jace, I'm pretty okay with that. I could also just see Vile and wasting my opponent off of white here. Again, this Search for Azcanta will be pretty good when it flips, though, if I don't take care of it. So I'm going to jam the sword. I am on red-white today. The deck list is now in the description below, because you all told me that was important. We got a 5-0 with the red-white list last night, so I don't just want to, go and abandon that. I'm working towards getting to 100 matches with the red-white list, and then I'm going to go ahead and write an article on what I think about it. Yes, I have, on my to-do list right here, I have MTG bot as one of the things that I need to do. I got through about half of my to-do list today, but I got a guest article in that I'm currently working on editing. So that took priority. Ooh, this board is strong. This board is really strong. So I know I said I was really concerned about wastelanding the Search for Azcanta, but now that we have this port and this Wingmare, I'm going to aggressively go on the mana denial plan here. Hey, timing out is a real condition on Moto. That is a real win condition. It is to be respected. So what's nice about my current position here is my opponent uses both of their mana to do this brainstorm. And now my Wingmare is going to guaranteed get a hit in with the sword. And that's going to put us pretty far ahead. Drawing a land there, also pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and not play it until after combat, though. We are going to put the maximum squeeze on my opponent here. Yes, the 3-mana Brainstorm. Legacy, absolute classic right here. Would I consider streaming a Legacy challenge at some point? Yes, absolutely I would. I actually haven't played in a Legacy challenge yet myself. That's on the to-do list as well. Our opponent is probably on about 0 outs with double port, Thalia, Wingmare here. Caracas back up for the Thalia as well, and a sword. Opponent has given up. They have had enough of that. So versus Miracles on the draw. We win. We win game 1 with Mana Denial. I was talking about this, I think it was on stream yesterday. I think the Miracles matchup is at least somewhat difficult. It's sort of awkward how bad many of our cards are against their deck. So like I want to board out all these Swords to Plowshares and the Magus, as well as my Rest in Peace. But as far as cards that are really, really good in this matchup, I have Cataclysm, Pia and Kieran, and Sanctum Prelate, and then I have these 3 sort of mediocre, maybe they do things cards. Miracles can be tough. I think it's tougher than it used to be. On Mono White Texas, you feel like the matchup might be better? I don't know about that. Like, the endgame inevitability of just bouncing Pia and Kieran all day with Caracas is probably better than most of what the Mono White deck has going on, except maybe Gideon. Hey, Jeff. Thanks for stopping by. We are up a game against Miracles now, going into game 2 here. Yeah, I agree. Escanta is really rough, you know, for either version of the deck. Alright, this hand is great. It has an Aether Vial, it has 2 Stoneforge Mystics, and a Revoker. You know, it's not a mana denial hand. Not as strong as our last one was anyway. But this has a lot of promise. Oh. Right, let's get rid of that. Thank you for pointing out the obvious for me. Yeah, who needs Mana Denial when you have Stoneforge Mystics? Like, the first one will probably fetch up Batterskull to demand an immediate response, and then the second one will fetch up Sword. Ooh, opponent does not have a Force of Will. That is fantastic for us. Yeah, first one can get Swords to Plowshare as well. Yeah. Doing any Grand Prix this year? Probably. I haven't looked at the Legacy schedule, but anything Legacy in a reasonable driving distance I will be going to. Alright. Disenchant, that's fine. That means this Disenchant isn't hitting this Batterskull. So there's that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that Disenchant art. There's a lot of Disenchants. Okay, so we sort of have 2 choices right now. We can put in Batterskull and Wasteland them, or we can put in Batterskull, not Wasteland them, and then plan on Jitte equip attack with Batterskull on the following turn. I kind of like taking them off of a land here so that my Batterskull won't get Snapcast or Disenchanted. It'll push my follow-up play back a little bit. But I think that's okay. I'm also going to go ahead and put this in now to play around something like a Vendilion Click. This isn't going to expose me to a Council's Judgment. because he doesn't have double white. See, there's that Snapcaster for Disenchant that I played around. Man, I feel smart. We'll attack in with the Batterskull, see if the opponent is willing to trade the Mentor and the Snapcaster for it. I'm guessing the answer is a resounding no. So I'm actually going to go ahead and drop this Thalia here, I think, to prevent the nonsense my opponent can do with a Monastery Mentor. Because if I rip a land, I still can put the Jitte in and attack with it next turn. And if I don't, I'm still just gaining an absurd amount of life. That's nice. That's really nice. Why am I not playing Sword of War and Peace? The red-white build has a few more sideboard options that make the War and Peace less necessary. I'll talk about that a little bit in between games when I can show you the deck list. So in this matchup, you have to make the choice on whether it's a time for you to put Sanctum Prelate on 1 or Sanctum Prelate on 6. And I've chosen 1 here since my opponent has a Monastery Mentor. Unless my opponent terminuses me exactly right now, I will still have a Batterskull on board and this Thalia that I can protect and bounce. And now I'm going to get this Jitte going too. The question is actually whether I want to get the Jitte going at the cost of exposing the Thalia, and I think I want to press my advantage since I still have 3 more creatures in hand. Although it's close. I don't think my opponent realizes how this is going to work out for them. I'm going to get to shrink this Monastery Mentor here. And then they are only going to do 3 damage to my Batterskull. Alright, they have another Mentor. That's fine. Let's see. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I can go ahead and just Flicker Wisp this Mentor out of the way and swing in for lethal. And I think I'm going to go ahead and do that here. Just going to double check to make sure I have a Jitte counter still. Do have a Jitte counter. Oh, sorry, I'm going to talk about Sword and War and Peace actually right now. So let me pull up the whole deck list here for you all. Game 2. So if we look at this sideboard here, we can see that there's actually a whole lot of removal here for the mirror. So the red-white taxes deck is approaching the mirror from a removal-based perspective rather than from an equipment-based perspective. So you're trying to keep your opponent's creatures off the board, and when you do that, their equipment matters a little bit less, and you do have one more sort of tutorable answer to equipment as well that the mono-white decks often don't have. This prelate could be a Sword of War and Peace. Like if I was going to change one card, that is probably what I would change. There's just sort of not room with the other stuff that you're trying to fit in, since you're trying to jam in one more removal card and one more sort of generic card that's really good against decks like Miracles and Check Pile. And because of that, you don't necessarily have the room for War and Peace, even though it is a great card, one of my absolute favorite cards. But this is maybe not the place for it. Alright, so we got that one versus Miracles pretty easily. Let's go ahead and go back in for the next one. That matchup against Miracles was far easier than normal. You know, usually they get the terminus. You know, they have a handful of early answers to your creatures, but I kind of picked the right decisions for that matchup, wastelanding my opponent so that my Batterskull couldn't get disenchanted. You know, choosing to go on the aggressive mana denial plan in game one. You know, after I got the draws that changed my strategy. A lot went right there, and very little went wrong. You know, that match took just a couple of minutes, so it's not necessarily indicative of how the matchup goes. So I don't have any data on what my opponent is playing, but they've mulliganed, and I have a pretty sweet hand, so I'm going to keep this. It's awkward that it has double Caracas, so depending on what my opponent is doing, I might lead on Caracas to try to get my second one wastelanded. Oh, no, please don't be elves. Please just pass the turn. Don't do it. Alright, it maybe isn't elves. Could still be something like Aggro Loam. So since my opponent mulliganed, I'm going to go ahead and aggressively wasteland this Dryad Arbor in the hope that this stops them from whatever it is they want to do, which is hopefully not elves things. Okay, my opponent did, in fact, not do anything. I don't think my opponent is a wasteland deck at this point. But I'm still just going to play the plains. One way or another, I want 2 mana next turn, whether it's to play Thalia or Mom and Swords to Plowshares. My opponent is thinking. I don't know if that means I'm in very bad shape or if I'm in very good shape. Alright, chat. The opponent is not playing elves. That is great. The question then becomes, what exactly is my opponent playing? No, I'm not sure that they're elves. They looked like elves. For the sake of mana efficiency, I'm going to go ahead and play this Thalia here. It's possible it's some sort of like Dark Maverick deck. I'm going to say that is my current theory, since they have Green Sun and Black. I don't think Depths, because on turn 1 they cast that Green Sun Zenith. Green Sun Zenith in Depths would be a little bit weird. So I have this recruiter, but I don't really know what I would recruit her for. Actually, that's a lie. It's probably just Wingmare. Wingmare seems pretty great right now. Although I am going to wait a turn to get this Mom in play. When I don't know what's going on, I value protection pretty highly. Whatever my opponent is doing, I agree. 4 Crusader would be great against them. I have to think about whether or not I want to play this Recruiter, or whether or not I just want to port my opponent again. 2 damage a turn isn't the greatest clock, but if I don't port my opponent this turn, I'm probably not porting them next turn either. I'll play patiently. Like, if my opponent has some creature to play, then this line also just lets me sword that creature. Otherwise, next turn I can Recruiter and use my Caracas as a Lotus Petal to still port them again. And then if I draw another land, I can play the Wingmare while still continuing to port. Yeah, the fact that my opponent is missing land drops here is very good news for us. Well, I had to think long and hard about something there. Are you just gonna like Thoughtseize me or something? Alright, they have a Cabal Therapy. Okay, your Cabal Therapy resolves. Is this Nick Fit after all? Is this just a terrible Nick Fit draw? Wonder if I'm getting ghosted. Recruiter of the Guard seems like a really weird name there. Like, if my opponent is some sort of Nick Fit deck, then, like, a Swords to Plowshares to stop whatever big idiot they put into play, that would probably be my first name. Okay. It is my guess that my opponent has a Phyrexian Tower in their deck that they want to be able to crop rotation for, to sacrifice Veteran Explorer and ramp. So now that this Mom isn't really going to be protection against Pernicious Deed, we're going to go ahead and attack in with it. We don't really care if the Mom or the Thalia gets Abrupt Decayed, honestly. Yeah, the flood here is a little bit unfortunate, but keep in mind that one of these lands did come from my opponent. Our current theory is that my opponent is just on a Nick Fit deck that is playing a couple of unusual cards. Like, the crop rotation is weird, the collective brutality is a little bit weird. It's also possible the opponent is watching the stream. A name on Recruiter of the Guard that's a 2 of in this deck seems very strange to me. I agree, it is looking slightly grim. Um, I don't know how bad it really is. This Flicker Wisp might do some interesting things. Can save something from the deed if I end up wanting something more than it. I think more or less no matter what, my opponent is going to blow this Pernicious Deed. So I'm going to try to push the damage and see if they let me. Wow, they let me do that. Interesting. This is probably the point where they're going to pop their deed, and then in response, I will use my Ether Vial to save the Thalia. My opponent was trying to play safe from their perspective. Using the deed on their previous turn was probably right, and they wouldn't be in this pinch if they did. Like, they would have had a turn with full mana. Alright, so versus Nick Fit, win. We got that one with mana denial, really. The opponent's, I think the opponent mulliganed once or twice too, which added to that. Alright, so against Nick Fit, we're kind of hoping to deal with the big giant idiots that they can potentially put into play. Sumerian Crusader is going to be great. Pia and Kieran will likewise be good. Cataclysm can blow up a lot of lands, and they need a lot of lands to function. These paths are probably okay. You know, Nick Fit can play a lot of big creatures like Siege Rhino, for example, although it looks like my opponent is probably primarily green-black based. And these two cards are maybes. The Relic Order gets rid of Pernicious Deed when timed correctly, and that's a big deal. Even though my opponent has this Eternal Witness, we're going to go ahead and get rid of the Rest in Peace, and from there, I need to think about what I want to do exactly. I don't play this matchup a lot. So for this matchup, there are some people who advocate bringing out Ether Vial because of Pernicious Deed, and this might be one of the few matchups where that is actually reasonable. I haven't actually tried that before. What's just bad against this deck? Jite's not particularly great. Probably don't actually want this prelate. I board out the vials. Don't board in a path. Trimming Magus is probably fine. Yeah, I could buy that. Let's have a bunch of outs to my opponent's stuff. So -1 path, +1 of those. Putting prelate on 3 is probably good. This is a good example of a hand that is probably a trap. It has a good mix of lands and spells. It has a couple of cards that are probably really good in this matchup, but this hand doesn't actually do anything. And the only card I can cast in this hand is Mother of Runes, so we're going to mulligan this one. This hand is arguably worse. If my opponent doesn't have any sort of mana acceleration, this is okay. If my opponent has a Veteran Explorer that lets me put this Batterskull into play, this is okay. I don't want to go to 5 against a deck like Nick Fit, so I will keep this. And I will put that Swords on top. My opponent fails to find a green creature card. Did they board out their Dryad Arbor? Is the Dryad Arbor in their hand? I'm guessing the Dryad Arbor is in their hand. I don't think my opponent's playing Hornet Queen. I haven't seen that card in a Nick Fit deck in a long time. We have to play a real slow game here, unfortunately. My opponent is a little resource light after wasting one of their cards, though. Man, these crop rotations seem pretty darn bad. The Bob, on the other hand, seems great. So even though I don't like wastelanding in the face of a Bob, like that's just a bad direction to take your gameplay. If I don't, my next play is Batterskull on 5, and my opponent has better big cards than I do, so it's a line I'm going to have to take. Dark Confidant also seems poor in your Pernicious Deed deck. Alright. There's a decay for this mob, unfortunately. Yeah, definitely not playing Hornet Queen with Bob around. Yeah, I'm guessing my opponent is like trying to juke me with a weird sideboard plan. If my opponent draws a land, just kind of randomly playing out this Flicker Wisp isn't the greatest. But I want to put my pressure on my opponent. This Bob can reveal some very heavy hitting cards, and my opponent might just die to this Bob. Like their plan might be to sweep this Bob off with a Pernicious Deed. Like maybe that's the sort of thing they're doing here. Alright. A Maze of Ith is annoying, but not the end of the world. Like, if my opponent plays that, they're not developing their mana, and we have a port to deal with the maze anyway. Chameleon Colossus! Alright, opponent confirmed can be doing anything. Do you think my opponent's gonna flip Emrakul this turn? Volrath Stronghold, okay. Chameleon Colossus is a heck of a card. Protection from black means that it is very good against a germ token. However, it is less good against Swords to Plowshares, unfortunately for it. Right, my opponent accepts the Bob block here. And now we have to ask ourselves what we want to do with our mana. Do we want to play Stoneforge and port once? Do we want to just hold up mana to be able to bounce Batterskull against something that's annoying? We have a lot of lines here. If I just port my opponent twice, they're dead in 3 turns. But if I play the Stoneforge and the next turn throw Fire and Ice on, I'll do 8 damage instead. And draw a card. I like drawing cards. Oh, hey, thanks for stopping by. We are against Nick Fit, basically. There are some unusual card choices from our opponent that have left us pretty confused for a good portion of this game. like, I don't actually care if my opponent Volrath strongholds anything that's in their graveyard, because their choice is Bob. And if they are just deploying Bob as a chump blocker for Batterskull each turn, I'm going to destroy them. All right, what does this Eternal Witness do? There are a lot of choices. An Abrupt Decay. Okay, that will deal with a sword or one of these creatures. That's a great draw. That is a great draw. Volrath Stronghold is a long-term problem, but I think we're on the short-term let's get the opponent dead plan. So we're going to Wasteland their maze here. And then just get in. We're going to put it on the Stoneforge here so that the Stoneforge can get in for damage or be forced to chump block. If we just put it on the Batterskull, we're going to gain 6 life, but we're not actually going to push any damage. And we care about pushing damage right now. So like now my opponent is going to chump block the Stoneforge and take 4 from this germ. Not sure why my opponent is in the tank. This block seems correct, and if they have a 1-mana removal spell, they probably would have snapped it off already. Well, that's an acceptable draw. That's fine. See what my opponent does with their mana. Oh, they don't even bother to float. So if somehow we lose this game, we are still going to win the set very easily because our opponent is going to time out. They've got like 3 minutes and 30 seconds left on their clock. Yep. That was a bit of an unusual game. I wasn't sure what my opponent was on for a good portion of that game due to just sort of the nature of the odd one-ofs in Nick Fit. So I'm just going to pull up the deck list for a second. I'm going to run to the bathroom and then we will get this next match started. Sorry about the delay. Not even sure your opponent knew what he was on. That is a fair point, Jeff. It seemed like a Nick Fit deck most of the time, but it might have been just like some random rock deck that just happened to have like one pernicious deed. Um, I don't know. Like it's mostly Nick Fit, but to to see that many people, or excuse me, to see that many like 2-drop removal spells, like all of those decays and collective brutalities, was a little weird. Share stream, best stream. I mean, like, if I was really trying, I would have, like, left the Snorlax hat to guard the stream. This hat is gas. Would have just left this on the chair. Does this fit in the cam? Due to the delay, I can't see it yet. Oh well. We'll figure it out. Moving on. So we're currently 2-0 in this league so far, and we have 2-0'd both of our games in a row here. Feels good. Snorlax the crap out of those Oppos. I agree. Yesterday we had the Snorlax shirt on. Today we have the Snorlax hat on. It's like a set bonus. D&T Mirran Crusader, Nick Fit, Chameleon Colossus. I think Chameleon Colossus is a pretty sweet card. Like, if we didn't have the Swords to Plowshares, like, right there, we would have been in big trouble, because that card would have invalidated the Mirran Crusader. Ride the Iguana. That's a sweet name. no info on our opponent, so we're going in blind. So chat, this is one of those hands where this is either going to be amazing or it is going to be terrible, because this Rest in Peace might be game-winningly good, and like Mom plus Rest in Peace will invalidate a ton of decks in the format. Or this hand might be garbage. Obviously, we're going to keep this hand. Can I magnify the hand? I don't know if I can do that. But I'll figure that out later for you. Oh, decrease the size of the board to increase the size of the hand? Okay. Oh man, play Grim Lavamancer. Ah, rats. Alright, so we are playing against Burn. So yes, I know I am playing a fetch that deals me 1 damage there, but I'd like to have a basic plains in play to play around Price of Progress to the best of my ability. Because that card is going to be very, very good. Opponent's hand is pretty sweet. Our hand is also solid. Jitte is great. And assuming that this Mom gets to do things and attack with this Jitte, or do anything with this Jitte, we're in good shape. Yes, this is the challenge round. The red version of this deck is very much a dog to burn. Removal spell, not removal spell for Mom. Oh god. Alright. Our opponent has gone all in, as they say. This Stoneforge is pretty great. We will see if we can do things quickly enough. So, if I don't take this, I take 2, 3, 4, 5 damage. I will not be dead to a burn spell. If I block, I can gain effectively 5 life, though, and then tap out for this Batterskull. So I am fine with the block here. Yeah, we can have a free block on a 1/2. All right. We did it, chat. Let me take a moment to record how bad this rest in peace in my opening hand was, though. We kind of lucked out with this one. All right. So we are on the play versus burn. We won versus ride the iguana. Okay, so versus burn. The situation is dire. Like, even though we're up a game, I still don't feel great about the matchup. So these are the cards that can potentially come in. So we'll start with the things that can just come out. Magus of the Moon, dead. Pia and Kieran Nalar, too slow. Rest in peace. Dead to every card that isn't named Grim Lavamancer. Phyrexian Invoker, dead to every card that isn't named Grim Lavamancer. And then we get 2 more cuts. Or we can not bring in this Crusader. Crusader isn't great against the red burn spells, obviously, but it is a fast clock, which sometimes matters against burn, especially in the shell that isn't necessarily good at closing out the game. I think I'll go ahead and cut 1 fetch land here. I don't really want to draw those. I guess the Mirren Crusader can go. Everything else is pretty reasonable. Jailer is really slow, but it is a 4 mana spell, which matters against Eidolon. So it's something that can take an Eidolon off the table without costing you any life. And I think that's worth keeping in the deck as a result. I would not fault anyone for taking the Jailer out, especially with how much other removal. Canonist is another smash target. You bet it is. But if they're smashing my Canonist instead of my Jitte, I am on board. We are going to mulligan this one. It doesn't have any lands. We're going to mulligan this one. This hand doesn't do anything. We're going to keep this one. This has what we want, especially if this is a land. Yes! Now, ideally, the opponent plays Goblin Guide and just gives us this land. That would be awesome. Woohoo! Chat! Chat, we did it! We got an extra card. Mulligan has been undone. My opponent in the chat typed, "Do you know the way?" I'm not sure what he's talking about. Is it the way to ride an iguana? I'll ask him. I'm not sure I do. I haven't ridden an iguana before. Yes, minor value. I am all about minor value. Your wife will love it. Yeah, this guy's great. Your wife will love it. I know I do. So I'm going to go ahead and cast the Thalia. I'm going to take 2 from it. My opponent will probably remove it, but that means the Stoneforge will be safe. Alternatively, I could just cast the Ether Vial, but I don't think I need the second vial. I do, however, need to plug in my laptop that is next to my regular computer. Yep, alright, there goes the Thalia, just like I thought. Will we get more minor value off this Goblin Guide? Nope, but there's a Stoneforge on top. That's fine. Ooh. Ooh. This has now gotten into dangerous territory. So a lot of what happens here depends on whether or not my opponent has a Smash to Smithereens in hand. That card will prove very difficult for me to beat pretty much no matter what I do. If my opponent doesn't have Smash, then my best line is probably Vial in Stoneforge, cast Jitte, pass, planning to attack with it next turn with Flicker Wisp and Mom backup. If my opponent has Smash, I am probably just going to die no matter what. Like the Batterskull plan is slower at gaining life than the Jitte plan. And I think I'm about gaining the life here rather than the double Stoneforge plan. The double Stoneforge plan is fine too. I wouldn't fault anyone for doing that. So the thing about the double Stoneforge plan is that I also have the opportunity to leave my Vial at 2, Vial in second Stoneforge put in Batterskull. But this line also gives me the opportunity to gain life. So if I don't block, then I am dead to just about anything, because my opponent can just send the Grim Lavamancer activation to my face if they have any one spell. So I could just chump with this Stoneforge, but that's not great either. Everything's kind of bad here. I can Mom and Protect, take 2, go to 6, would die to double spell. My opponent could Grim Lavamancer the Mom, use another removal spell on the Stoneforge. But then I don't necessarily die. Double block and give 1 protection. Double blocking and giving 1 protection would be fine, I suppose. Like, if I do a double block scenario, then, like, when I activate the Mom, whatever I target with Mom dies to Grim Lavamancer, and then the second one dies, so I'm not going to do that. Yeah, I'm just going to block with single Mom. Ooh, Searing Blaze is rough. And then this Grim Lavamancer can take out the Stoneforge. Also rough. My opponent is not being kind enough to give me the opportunity to accidentally produce a Batterskull. Yeah, I'm mostly dead to most of these lines. Yeah, I was not planning on winning the game here on the draw. Sulfuric Vortex. Just Rift Bolt at my face. Okay. That's fine. We can die to that. Alright. Game 2 on the draw. Loss. Game 2, lost to creatures. Still more or less like everything we did with sideboarding. Let me just see if I want to put that Mirroring Crusader in here somehow. Maybe on the play I'm supposed to be more aggressive and not have the Relic Order for Sulfuric Vortex. Although the Relic Order hits Eidolon too. Yeah, we'll keep that. This is fine. Ooh. So the good news is that 5 of the cards in this hand are very good. The bad news is Aether Vial 2 is bad, and Aether Vial 3 is really bad. This hand doesn't have any removal, it doesn't have any life gain. I'm going to go ahead and ship this one. This is close. I don't really like Revoker in the burn matchup. It's not a reliable way to stop Grim Lavamancer. Sand is also not great. It's about as good as the last one. It has Swords to Plowshares for an early creature, and if my opponent is dependent on that, this hand is good. Sure, and that's fine. Like I have a stance on Jailer in this matchup, and I like it for being a removal spell against Eidolon, and then that's why I'm doing it. But I won't fault anyone for keeping Revokers. Yeah, Wasteland does nothing in this matchup, but it's still a mana source, and you need to hit 2 to 3 land drops on time to do anything in this matchup. And I like Wasteland in the red build in particular as a way to go and deal with your own lands. Yeah, of note, Wasteland has much more utility in the splash builds than in mono white. You know, in mono white, your opponent probably borked out the Price of Progresses, but in the red white, not necessarily. You also need your land drops, go farming. Yes, Price of Progress will be rough. We are not winning this game if our opponent has Price of Progress. Fact. So I cast the Sword of Fire and Ice because if I can get this on the Batterskull, fantastic. The game is over. Just absolute 0 outs to that. Like, oh, what's happening now? Jeez. Yeah, my opponent has drawn a lot of lands. Like, I'm going to take 5 this turn. 5 more this turn, I should say. But then my opponent is going to be on very few outs. Also, if my opponent casts a Smash to Smithereens on this sword, so my Batterskull lives, again, great. So sure, that won't change much unless they play a second Eidolon. Do they have Fire Blast to get me? Wow, everything is going right here. So not only did we just kind of win the game, but now we can also Swords to Plowshares either an opposing threat or our own Germ token. And we have the opportunity to go and wasteland our own land if they have Price of Progress. Things are looking up. Feel pretty confident about this. It also means that a Smash to Smithereens doesn't just completely blow us out anymore. Whew! Got a little lucky there. Burn is difficult. So we won that with Sword of Fire and Ice and Batter Skull. And very narrowly stabilized. All right, so for any of you that have just tuned in recently, I'm just going to flash the deck list again real quick. We are playing Red-White Taxes, with the red being for Magus of the Moon and Pia and Kieran Nalar in the main, as well as Cunning Spark Mage in the sideboard. We are currently 3-0 in this league. We've beat Miracles, Nick Fit, and Burn so far. The first two matches were both 2-0s, and that was a very close 2-1 there. Burn is not a great matchup. All right. Let's see if we can go and make this a 4-0 now. What's my thoughts on Leonin Arbiter and Ghost Quarter? I think it is a fantastic budget build, and I think more generally, the Leonin Arbiter builds make your bad matchups better, but your good matchups worse. Like, you get much more play against decks like Elves and a lot of the other combo decks. You disrupt a lot of early fetch lands, but you lose a lot of ability to just rumble. Because Leonin Arbiter is just a vanilla 2-2. So as, you know, opposed to things like Vryn Wingmare and, you know, Mirren Crusader and Sarah Avenger and even Brimaz, like, you're just not getting into the red zone as much. Okay, Clue Picky. Our opponent was last seen on Grixis Delver a month or two ago. We're going to mulligan this one because it has no lands. Yeah, so my opinion is mostly the same as what I was just saying. Like, if you're, I'm fine if you're playing them in addition as well as for budgetary reasons, but in addition, like your mana gets a little worse and your ability to just close games gets a little worse. You get better early game in exchange for worse late game, and I really like Death and Taxes late game. I don't want to mess with that too much. This one is going to be a mulligan as well. One colorless mana source is not going to get there on the play. We're going to go to 5 and hope for an aggressive 1-land Ether Vial hand, ideally. Alright, we will keep the 4-land Stoneforge Mystic hand. That is acceptable. How good is this Rest in Peace in this random matchup? We're going to put it on top and potentially fetch it away if we don't need it, based on the opponent's turn 1 play. Like, if my opponent plays a Deathrite Shaman off an Underground Sea right here, we are keeping that Rest in Peace. And we'll get him. Here, is it happening? Is it happening? It's happening! Phil looks like a genius. And we're going to get a nice, safe, basic Plains here before jamming this Rest in Peace. It's probably not going to resolve. I don't expect this to resolve. I'll be really happy if it does. That will make up for our double mulligan. Yeah, okay. That's fine. That's fine. But it would have been great. That's fine. Like, we set our opponent back a land, and we now have a Stoneforge Mystic that otherwise would have gotten dazed. That's... Alright. So any white fetch will get a plateau, so it doesn't matter which ones I run. There is no basic mountain in this deck. Now we have a choice of which equipment we want to get. All three of these are viable choices right now. Jitte is the one that I could equip next turn and get in with, but I don't really expect this Stoneforge to live, so similarly I don't necessarily want to get Batterskull. I think I'm going to get Sword of Fire and Ice. That way, if things go wrong, and I expect they will, this can be a source of eventual card draw to get us out of this situation. Although the board might be so out of control then that I would just really want the Jitte. Yeah, I talked myself into Jitte. So a lot of people talk about the flooded strand tech, but that doesn't matter that much because the only turn that really actually matters on is turn 1 on the play when you don't have any other play. Sure, I'm not far off from casting Batter Skull, but like that's 2 turns, and my opponent can have a Cabal Therapy to get rid of it, or a Daze, and I'm not going to be able to play this around Daze. Like if the Stoneforge Mystic gets removed, I'd rather have a Jitte or a Sword of Fire and Ice, either one of those in play as insurance. It's also somewhat likely that my opponent has a Force of Will. And when we get to our turn, we'll have to decide whether or not we want to dump this Jitte into play or cast it if the Stoneforge somehow doesn't die. Gitaxian Probe is a strong magic card. I don't think it's busted. I think it is very, very good. It feels like cheating with Cabal Therapy. The reason I'm playing the fetches that I am is because I bought them thinking that I might end up playing Maverick eventually, and so buying them would save me from buying other fetches later. In my paper list, if I am playing a splash build, I do like 1 of each fetch and 2 of one fetch to play around Sorceress Spyglass and Pithing Needle effects. Alright, opponent got really good value off that Pyromancer that turn. They cast a couple of spells. Instead of killing a token, there is an argument for Flicker Wisping one of my lands so that I can port my opponent. But I'm pretty under the gun as far as pressure goes, so I wanted to alleviate some amount of that pressure. Oh yeah, I agree. We are very likely dead. Like, unless my opponent's hand is just terrible, we're dead. But they cantripped a lot, and are still cantripping, apparently. So my opponent is offering the Pyromancer trade, but that's a trade that we can't really afford to take. We have to hope this Flicker Wisp lives so that we can put Jitte on it and get there. Oh, please don't be a removal spell after all of that. You gave me hope. Oh, jeez. This gets Force of Willed, we're 100% dead. Didn't. Alright, so if I attack in and kill both of these Delvers, that puts... How much damage will I take? 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 damage. That is super inconvenient. If I attack in, kill a Delver and a Pyromancer, and the Delver doesn't flip, then that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That is only 9 damage. No, if I kill both Delvers, I'll die. Because my opponent has 2 from the Pyromancer, 2 from the Death Rate, that's 4, and then 6 from tokens. I will die exactly if I take that line. So I can kill Pyro and Delver, hope that Delver does not flip, and if that works... Yeah, alternatively, I can kill young Pyro, keep a counter to gain 2 life, so I don't like that line, Disgruntled Elf. If I equip Don't Attack, I am in big trouble if those Delvers flip and they have a removal spell. Or really, either one of those would be bad. Alright, so that's currently... Alright, well, I guess we can go to his turn and let the Delver flip happen. Oh, the Brainstorm. So if either one of these Delvers flips, I just die. So it's 6, 9, 10... So we let the first one happen. Alright, so a Delver flips. If I kill this second Delver here, then I take 6, 9, 10, 11 damage. No, if the Delvers don't flip, we can live. Oh yeah, we're dead now. I'm gonna see if my opponent will show us one more card here. Yeah, Path is great. Rest in Peace is pretty good. We'll see whether or not I want 3. I might not want all 3. So what I usually do is I start by taking out Revokers. They're good against Deathrite Shaman, but then dead against most of the... Oh, you mean if the Delvers flip, we are dead regardless of what we do. Yeah, those Delvers flipping just means we are dead. I usually cut Recruiter in this matchup because it's too slow, and things are usually going very right for you when you're in the situation where you can actually just, like, Recruiter and start doing your things. Like, you have active vials that didn't get disrupted. In those cases, Recruiter is good, but otherwise it's pretty slow. Palace Jailer is a fine card, but a little awkward against young Pyromancer and potentially True Name Nemesis, so I usually board it out in the Delver matchup, despite the fact that it can be very good. Like, I have so much other removal that I'm not necessarily worried about it. And then I need one more cut. At this point, I have to decide whether I want to trim one Thalia or whether I want to keep the Pia and Kirin in the deck. It is a real endgame bomb that I don't mind drawing, but it's very hard to cast. Yeah, I don't know if I want 2 extra Rest in Peace. I definitely want 1 extra Rest in Peace. Like, I like boarding in 2, always. The third is maybe a bit too much. Let's run 2 and keep both Thalia 4 and the Pia and Kirin. I also could trim some number of Thalia since I'm going really heavy on removal spells and keep the recruiters. I'll submit like this. And mulligan this one, it doesn't have lands. We will keep this one, this hand is great. Okay, so at SoCal Maverick, I know it seems really weird to trim Thalia, but sometimes in the red-white build, it can be absolutely fine to trim Thalia since you are playing so many one-drop removal spells. It's actually something that I've talked to quite a bit with Ayati. No, Magus is amazing in this match, but I don't want to trim that either. Do I want a third Swords to Plowshares? You bet I do. Ayati, real name Ben Etai Sason. He top 8'd, I think some open with the red-white build, and he's very active on the source. Yeah, like once we draw a Thalia or a Stoneforge Mystic, this hand is amazing. Cabal Therapy on Swords to Plowshares would be rough, though. So I wanted to think for a minute about whether or not I wanted to play the Windswept Teeth or the Caracas there. I'm going to play out the Caracas. I like to save my fetches for as long as I can in case I need to get a plateau. The Caracas might be useful later, but it's not the end of the world if I lose it since I have nothing to do with it. Yes, we're a real dead duotherapy. The blind therapy on Swords to Plowshares would be brutal. Oh, so I just saw that. At Tonic Booth, no, I don't board in Prelate in this matchup with this build because I have 7 one-drop removal spells, and it's pretty easy for Delver to get underneath you, and you need to answer their creatures rather than their spells. So that's why I'm not playing Prelate. It can come down a little bit too late, and it shuts off most of my disruption. Yes, they did probe. So it would not be a blind therapy, it would just be a therapy. Goodbye, Deathbred Shaman. Hardly knew you. I will go ahead and fetch the plateau with this one, because if my opponent has a a wasteland, it's likely to go after this Caracas now, since it'll protect the Thalia. So at Tonic Booth, it's sort of both, really. Prelate is what I think of as a very good Game 1 card against Delver, but a weaker Game 2 and 3 card against Delver. Like, in the right scenarios, it will still be very, very good. Like, you know, when you clear their board and then you drop it, like, it can be great. But is it finally happening? Is the therapy finally happening? Gurmag Angler. Okay. So my opponent played a probe and then saw this. I'm going to go ahead and just go to my turn and then cast this Swords to Plowshares. It's very possible that I brick on a draw, and I would rather not get this dazed, even though I have another one. See, we drew Thalia, I told you. Norad. I accept your 1-for-1 removal spell. So if my opponent doesn't remove this Stoneforge now, then I kind of get to... Yep, never mind. Well, we'll hardcast this Batterskull at the rate this game is going. Alright, so we now have 2 removal spells queued up for my opponent's threats. Unless they play something slippery like a True Name, we're in pretty good shape. And I cast Swords to Plowshares before Path to Exile in case they play something bigger later that I have to answer. Yes, a slippery Boggle might be tricky under current circumstances. This is not really how we want to use a Flicker Wisp. You know, normally I might wait to, like, get rid of that Null Rod for a minute, but, you know, I just want to put a clock in play. They're at 21 life. I need 7 turns of pecking them for 3 a turn. Alright, bye little buddy. Hey, hello again. So you can kind of see what the... Do we want to ram the Batterskull into Days? I was on the play for this game. They probably boarded out Days. What if they didn't board out Days, though? I'm not really in any immediate hurry. Yeah, I wouldn't have Days in either. It's super bad for me if they do have the Days, but they have nothing going on. Like, they might force this. I see force as a likely scenario, not Days. Playing against Grixis Delver. Sure, I don't need to cast it now, but if I get this in here and it works, we're very, very far ahead. I don't want to give my opponent more time to draw counter spells. I'm going to jam. This isn't necessarily right. I would also, like, if this gets in play and then the Germ token dies, I would like to have Flicker Wisp available as an option to reset it as well. Okay. I accept. No regrets. So, like, say I don't cast it there. They know I have the Batterskull. They know I'm going to play around Days. They then ponder trying to aggressively find a Force of Will, and I end up in about the same spot with a potential turn of tempo lost. So I don't regret the line. Yep, that is annoying. It might not be that they've boarded suboptimally, it might be that they just don't have that many things. Fetching might change my clock by 1 turn, but I would really like to take the marginal, 1% thinning of my deck that will add up over a couple of turns. I am a-okay with taking that because I need to race this true name. I have literal no ways of getting it off the board in my build. And that is a big disadvantage of the red-white build over the traditional mono-white build. It is much worse against true name nemesis. Oh, jeez. We're dead, chat. We're super dead. That doesn't help. So game 1, we essentially lost to young Pyro tokens there. In game 2, we lost to double true name. We were well prepared to beat anything other than True Name Nemesis there with that extra path that was in hand. But True Name, is normally very, very good against this deck and is particularly potent against the red-white build. Holy Light would be okay. So just to kind of pull up the deck list to just look at this and sort of visualize this, the removal that we have in the sideboard, which is sort of a good portion of the sideboard if you sort of loosely consider things like Pia and Kieran and Rest in Peace's removal as well. None of this can deal with True Name Nemesis. Whereas if we pull up the regular white Death and Taxes deck, sorry, let me pull up the Crusader one. If we pull up this Death and Taxes list, we get 2 Council's Judgment to deal with it as outs. And we have more creatures that fly that can go above it. Normally we don't have a lot of outs to True Name, but this changes to a 0 out to True Name. And so there is, some justification for playing a card that could deal with it, making one of these paths a Holy Light, making one of these paths a Blessed Alliance, for example. But I've sort of given up percentage points against True Name sort of intentionally here, since it's a card that's so difficult for us to beat normally. Having 1 answer to a True Name versus having 0 isn't a ton unless it's something tutorable like Orzhov Pontiff. All right, so we are currently 3-1 going into the final round of this league, so we are going to cash no matter what we do, so that's nice. We lost to Grixis Delver, which is a fine matchup. There were some different lines we could have taken, but pretty much no matter what, we were dead that game too. Even if our Batterskull resolves, it's not beating double True Name, and we don't have a lot of outs to double True Name, no matter what. True Name is a silly card. It is a card design that I think was a mistake. And I'm a big fan of powerful and busted cards, generally speaking. But for that to be in a commander product at that aggressive of a mana cost, with those stats being untouchable by the vast majority of removal in any constructed format that could see play in, not the most well-balanced card. It's a very frustrating card to play against. There are plenty of people who argue, well, you just need to play different removal cards. Well, most of the cards that are good against True Name are bad against most other creatures in Legacy. You get your things that are -1/-1 sweepers that can't even get a Deathrite off the table. You get your Edict effects, but an Edict isn't really good if you do, like, Deathrite Shaman into True Name, for example. It's very frustrating. You can ignore the card if you're playing unfair decks, but when you're playing, a fair deck or a control deck, it's very frustrating to play against. Honestly, I'm surprised that we don't see more of it than we do. True Name would be more fine without Deathrite Shaman in the format, but that's a whole nother discussion. A turn 3 True Name is pretty darn fair. A turn 2 True Name on the play is very difficult to beat. So I might have some Celestial Flares in my box of bad white cards I keep around for Death and Taxes over on the counter over there. It's not what I'm looking for. I've played Celestial Flare, I've played Blessed Alliance, I've tried a lot of things. I haven't gone Wing Shards deep yet, although some people trollingly suggest that all the time as an answer to True Name, because it can get multiple True Names. Yeah, SoCal Maverick, I agree. For a lot of decks in the format, Deathrite into Leovold is really rough. Like, even for Death and Taxes, on the wrong sorts of draws, Deathrite into Leovold can be crippling good. Like, when you're on, like, the, like, planning on double wastelanding swords, draw, like, that sort of thing, you know, it can get a lot of value or stop you from doing a lot of things. Wing Shards might be better if we weren't a Thalia deck, but Thalia Wing Shards is not a great combo. True Name is the reason I split Avenger and Crusader. Yeah, that's fair. Like, my 4X Crusader build that I also play is geared towards beating decks like Checkpile. It is not geared towards beating True Name Nemesis, and it intentionally is a little worse against True Name to be a little better against those decks. I think Avenger is a great card, generally speaking. I think there's a little bit too much Baleful Strix and extra black removal floating around for me to want to be heavy on Avenger right now. But I love the card. Avenger isn't as good with a lot of Cavern of Souls as well. Like, it's fine. But I've liked Avenger more when I've been playing non-Cavern builds than when I've been playing Cavern builds. Alright, we have been in the queue for about 6 minutes now. That's pretty ridiculous. Alright, there we go. We're playing against Z Magic. Our opponent had played a lot of Affinity and Artifact decks in other formats, but I have no idea what they're playing here. So we are playing against Z Magic, and we have the play. I want to keep this hand. It's got a Thalia, it's got a Rest in Peace, and a Revoker. That's 3 very good potential turn 2 plays. We are probably playing Thalia on turn 2. I'm just going to lead on Wasteland to hide the most information that I can. So I am just using MTG Goldfish. You can just search the user's name, and it will give you their recent finishes that were reported. This doesn't look good. The good news is this Rest in Peace is going to be gas if we don't die here. There's a Grizzlebrand. There's an animate dead on a Grizzlebrand. So, no, my opponent plays Affinity in like other formats other than Legacy. I think it was like Pauper. This Grizzlebrand is fine. This Grizzlebrand isn't that scary. Like, we can draw swords to get out of this. We can draw Caracas to get out of this. My opponent is also aggressively going down to 5 life. So if we do draw Caracas, that means very, very good things for us. And in my Rest in Peace file, we drew it against Reanimator, where it would have been Gas if we got to turn 2. Oh, Peace Stream's Legacy. Neat. So, some people might concede at this point in response to the unmask to hide information. I think that's kind of silly when we have Caracas as an amazing out to this Grizzlebrand. Ooh, opponent's still going. Look at him go. He's on a 365. Oh, do you mean like he's on a like stream a different deck every day sort of challenge? Or just a stream every day sort of thing? Oh, there will be plenty of taxing. I am hoping to be streaming on a very regular basis. Putting a... You know, they didn't even take my Revoker so that I could exhume it back into play. That's really unfortunate. Really unfortunate here for me. Okay, just stream for a whole year. Lots of people do it to build a following. Yeah, okay. I could see that. My opponents still have more gas and they get to bounce my Wasteland. That might be rough. Alright, that's fair. Played Maverick earlier this week and he said it was the first time he played Legacy. Maverick's not a great starter deck. That has some complicated lines. Not like as much as D&T, but like something like this, like Red Black Reanimator is much more sort of beginner friendly. So I'm gonna let my opponent show me some more cards, but I expect we are dead. Like, we need to draw Caracas followed by Swords to Plowshares. I don't know if I agree that Maverick has more complicated lines. Like both are complicated decks. Um, I think Knight of the Reliquary is a really complicated card, and Green Sun Zenith is as well. Yeah. We're dead. Alright, so against Reanimator, we basically bring in our whole sideboard. Not really exaggerating very much here. So we just start boarding out cards that aren't great, and we kind of start with anything that's slow. Like the Stoneforge Mystic package doesn't disrupt anything they're doing. This Pia and Kieran is really, really slow. Sort of those are our starting points for... Yes, and of course I think Death and Taxes is more complicated for similar reasons. Let's see, so 1, 2... So essentially what we're going to try to do is just stop them from doing things that matter. We end up with a ton of removal for all of their stuff, and then we will peck them to death with literally anything. It doesn't particularly matter what. Could probably trim one land here. Or actually the Magus isn't great. Mom does some things. It protects against Tidespout Tyrant. With a flyer, it stonewalls a Grizzlebrand from gaining life. It protects against Collected Brutality, which matters with a lot of our hate bears. So I guess the question is, do I want to cut these Magus because my Caracas is so important? And the answer is probably. I could realistically trim a land here as well. I don't think I'll do that, though, because like my ports are good, my wastes are good, and I'd really just like to hit land drops to cast all of this stuff, because now most of my deck is just geared to beat Reanimator. I could bring in the Mirran Crusader over another land, actually. I don't hate that. Sure, Jailer's slow, but it's another piece of removal, and if they don't have anything, like, it will just draw us into all of this stuff, and that's fine. So, like, a lot of people think the red-black Reanimator matchup is very fast, like in that Game 1 scenario, but that is often not the case. This hand is okay. It doesn't have a Rest in Peace, but it has a Mom and a Canonist and a Path. So, like, we have a curve of Mom into Canonist, or Mom into Path, or porting as well. This one's close. I'd really prefer this Canonist to be a Thalia. Yeah, I'm going to keep it, Disgruntled Elk. There are a lot of 6-card hands that are better, but there are a lot of 6-card hands that are worse, too. I have a lot of tools to win this matchup right now. And since I have 3 lands and a bunch of things to buy time, I like where this is going. Looks like our opponent has a tricky hand, or they're talking about it on their stream as well. So we just to double check, we boarded out all of our red cards, right? Okay, yeah, we are a mono white deck at this point. I'm no SCG stream yet, Nick. I've got plenty of room for growth. Yeah, last night was great. Last night we had, I don't know, 100 or 120. I didn't look exactly. We'll see whether or not we just get skunked again. Oh, so they are targeting themselves with this. Alright. So, just going to take a snip of that. So my opponent has a pretty good hand here. So they have Collective Brutality, Exhume, Lotus Petal, Reanimate, Unmask. So there goes the Lotus Petal, and there goes that Reanimate. Oh yeah, this is insane numbers for 2 days in. But a lot of people subscribed to me a couple months ago when I initially thought the stream was going to get going. So a ton of people just got alerts and then started watching immediately. Yeah, so he can only draw 7, but he has that unmask in his hand, so he'll get to unmask my path. It sort of depends on what my opponent has here, like what all they get to do. Alright, so they are unmasking me. So that's gone. And this will take my path. So if I draw a land and a Flicker Wisp, we can Stonewall the Grizzlebrand. If I draw a Caracas, I can bounce it. If I draw swords, I can get rid of it. I have 2 more paths as well. Vryn Wingmare would be a great draw. Recruiter would be a great draw. Yeah, there's tons of very good draws here. Like, even a Thalia would be a pretty solid draw because it doesn't look like my opponent necessarily has a land. Yep, there's a land. Alright, and my opponent did not have a second creature, so they got rid of their Exhume. So now I know that my opponent has a Collective Brutality, and that's all I know about their hand at this point. Alright. So the opponent is very much all in on this Grizzlebrand now. Alright, so there's a Flicker Wisp, so a white land would be a great draw. I want a format without counter magic or hand disruption. Alright, so my opponent has opted not to draw cards. Alright. Recruiter is a fine draw. So this is one of those times where I can decide exactly how cheeky I want to try to get. The safe play is to just grab Bryn Wingmare because it, along with Mom, can stonewall this Grizzlebrand temporarily. I could get Palace Jailer, which would be amazing if I draw another land, or I could get Containment Priest, where if I draw another land for the Flicker Wisp, the Containment Priest Flicker Wisp combo can do some dirty, dirty things. My opponent has this Collected Brutality in hand, which is sort of awkward, but I'm still going to go ahead and take the Wingmare because it's a guaranteed flyer that I can cast next turn. Revoker would be okay to draw, but not good enough to tutor for here. I don't think I want to be greedy. I think I want to play safe. Because, like, if I go and get the Jailer and I don't, like, then I'm waiting to spike the land for both Flicker Wisp and Jailer, either of which could check the Grizzlebrand. So by getting Wingmare, I just get something that 100% checks the Grizzlebrand. Entomb for a Leshnorn, reanimate a Leshnorn would be bad. I wish Recruiter was flying. That's dirty. Alright, they got a Tidespout Tyrant. Okay. So draft 1 of this deck did have the Fairy Macabre, but I cut it for the Sanctum Prelate because my Reanimator numbers were very, very, very high. So as of right now, like I'm 2-0 with this build against Blue-Black Reanimator. I am 1-0 against this build with Red-Black Reanimator. I think I was something like 6-2 against it with the other mono-white build or something like that. Like, Fairy's really good in this matchup in particular, but otherwise it's not really a good sideboard card. It doesn't come in a lot, and in a lot of the matchups where you board it in, like Ant and like lands, it doesn't do as much as your other hate cards. So I opted to go up to the 3rd copy of Rest in Peace as well. Okay, this is actually not the worst. Getting this Canonist means I can't actually bounce anything with the Tides. Oh, Lotus Petal. Lotus Petal, alright, never mind. Uh-oh. The opponent needs to... Ugh. Yuck. We're probably dead, chat. Yeah. I'm gonna let my opponent do their thing, but ugh. We might be giving them the flawless victory. No permanent win. I was hoping to draw a Wasteland so I could Wasteland myself, but we're not going to get to do that. Alright, we died. Grizzlebrand is a beast in Legacy? Who knew? That. So we could have mulliganed our hand that game, but I do think the hand was fine. Our opponent had things that worked very well against our hand, but you know, for most of that game, we were very, very live to draw into great cards. I don't regret not mulliganing that hand. Yeah, and like sometimes Reanimator is dumb, and that happens. Let me pull up my data from the mono white list because I played against Reanimator more there. So against Reanimator. Yeah, so like with my mono white Death and Taxes deck, in like the 160 games that I played, I was 5-0 against Reanimator. I just never lost that matchup. Because generically speaking, D&T is very, very favored against that deck. Like, sometimes your opponent had the nuts, and our opponent did indeed have it 2 games in a row, but other times all the tools that we have are very well adapted to beating Reanimator. Can confirm Reanimator is dumb, went 301 at F&M with a misbuilt deck. Sure. So surgical extraction is something that is in my mono white build, but is not in my red white build. So instead, I'm heavier on Rest in Peace. I have the same number of Grave Hate cards. I still have 4 Grave Hate cards. I've just gone a little bit slower here. And the red-white build is marginally worse against Reanimator than the white-white build. You know, due to the fact of not having surgicals and having a couple of cards here that just don't necessarily matter. But I more or less still like the matchup, and I still feel pretty good about it. Okay, so let's kind of recap this league here. We played against Miracles, Nickfit, Burn, Grixis Delver, and Red-Black Reanimator, and we ended up 3-2. We started out 3-0 and then lost to Grixis Delver and Red-Black Reanimator. Neither of those last 2 games were particularly close. We lost both of them in 2. At DN Solver, yes, I really like the Reanimator matchup. I was just talking about it, with the mono white build, I was 5-0 against it in my last data set. With the red white build, I'm still positive against it. So I think that puts me at 3. I'll just pull it up. So that puts me 1-1 against Red-Black Reanimator, and I am 2-0 versus Blue-Black Reanimator. So overall, I am 3-1 versus Reanimator decks with this build. Okay, yeah, so the mono white build has surgicals in it, so let me just flash that one again. So for Graveyard Hate, or excuse me, the mono white build had 5 Graveyard Hate cards, my modern one. My red white build has 4. So it's surgical, rip, containment priest with the mono white build. Whereas with the red-white build, I have 1 Rest in Peace in the main deck here, and then I have a Containment Piece, Priest, and 2 more Rest in Peace in the board, as well as a handful of removal spells and things that can be annoying. So that brings me to the end of this league, and it's a little after 11 now, so I think I'm not going to start up any other matches. Chad, I'm going to hang around for about 5 minutes here. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I guess I'll do this host thing and find some other channel to throw you all into that's currently streaming some Legacy. Gerda will run mono white next time. I'm curious to see another good pilot run it to discuss different lines. So let me take a look at my matchup count here. I am currently at 82 matches with red-white. Once I get to 100, I'm going to write an article about it. So as soon as I get past 100, I will probably stop playing red-white and try the mono-white deck again. But if I get bored of this or I feel like it's not having a good day, I might play some mono-white. I'm glad you all enjoyed it. It wasn't quite the impressive 5-0 that we got yesterday, but I'm still fine with that. Like, I think we played well. We kind of got stomped on in the last 2 rounds, but that's fine. All right, folks, any other questions for me? Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and host some random guy's stream who is playing Legacy but has 1 viewer and go ahead and make his night, and we'll see what happens to him. I also just kind of want to try out the host command because I don't really know how it works. Like, I know what I'm supposed to do, but I haven't tried it yet to see if it works. Alright, I'm going to try the host command and just see if I can send you all to some random person's Legacy stream for the sake of trying it. So here I go.